Hi everyone, Crista Cowan here with another episode of The Barefoot Genealogist. Today we are talking about places. This is the third video in a series about Family Tree Maker 2012, and we're going to talk specifically today about resolving places within Family Tree Maker. We've got a lot to cover, and there are a lot of different opinions on the topic. So as always, if you have questions after the presentation, if you're watching this live, I'll be available on chat. You can ask those questions. Or if you're watching an archived version of this on YouTube, you can just leave a comment. I do monitor those comments and will respond as appropriate. Now, when we talk about places in genealogy, one of the biggest challenges that we have has to do with the fact that place names and place boundaries change over time. And so one of the pieces of advice that I'm going to give you is to record the historical place as often as possible. And with the new features in Family Tree Maker, you can record the historical place and the current place so that you know exactly where that historical place was. So with that introduction, let's dive in and take a look at the place features in Family Tree Maker 2012. One of the first things I want to talk about has to do with why you might want to resolve place names. So in my Family Tree Maker program, I think I have over 7,000, let's take a look here, over 7,000 places. Where you're going to find that in Family Tree Maker is just come up here and click on this Places tab or Places button, and you'll see a list of all the places that you have listed. And it's every individual place, right? So you can see I have full lists here of all sorts of things. Now you'll notice some of these things have question marks by them, actually quite a few of them too. And then every once in a while you'll come across something that has a check mark by it. A check mark is what we call a resolved place. That means if I click on it, my program knows exactly where on the map that specific location is and that it's been standardized. So that takes me to this first reason why we would want to resolve place names. It's for the purpose of standardization. I don't want to have the same place listed 4 times in my database 4 different ways if I can standardize that all to one thing. And then that second reason, which is the ability to locate it correctly on a map so that my software knows where it is, so that I know where it is, so that anybody that comes after me knows where it is. Another reason why you might want to resolve place names has to do with the ability to group common locations. So if I have a whole bunch of family that's from the same county in a particular state, if I've standardized those place names, I'll be able to group those people together very quickly, which then allows me to do place-based research a lot easier because I can generate lists of everybody in my database that's associated with this town or with this county or with this location in Europe, whatever, right? I can do that place-based research if I've resolved those place names. If I haven't resolved those place names, the larger my database gets, the more confusing it's going to be to have to keep up with who's where and what events occurred where in their lives. Another reason, and I didn't put this on the PowerPoint, but I've been playing around a little bit with it, has to do with mapping out your ancestors' lives. So especially for those ancestors that were highly migratory, the ability to plot on a map exactly where they lived throughout their life or where different events in their life occurred the ability to do that is available as soon as you standardize those place names. So that's just some of the reasons why you might want to standardize place names. Now let's look at what causes place names to be unstandardized, and we'll walk through several examples in Family Tree Maker so that you can see exactly how this has happened in my own research. A few of them I've tweaked so that they look like they're a problem. Some of them really were a problem, and this is an opportunity to fix those in my database. So the first reason has to do with just simple spelling errors. We all make them or inherit them or have some confusion about exactly how a place should be spelled. As a matter of fact, sometimes the name of places, the manner in which it's spelled has changed over time. And so you may have places in your database where it's spelled incorrectly, and so the computer doesn't recognize it. So let me just give you an example of that in my own database here. So if I scroll up here to the top, I have a location here for, let's see if I can find it quickly, for Albemarle, Virginia. There it is, right at the top, okay? Now, I can click on this little icon right over here to resolve this place name, and it'll try to do it for me, right? Now, what it's telling me is it doesn't recognize this county, and so it just wants to change it to the name of the state. And I could do that, but then I lose that valuable piece of information about the county. And so what I did was I looked through this list of suggestions, and at the very top is Albemarle County. I'm probably saying that wrong. That's part of the problem. Albemarle County, Virginia. And you can notice that I spelled it incorrectly. And so I added an extra R in there or something, I think. And that was why it wasn't recognized. So I can just highlight the correct version of that, click replace. Now, watch carefully. As soon as I click replace, what's going to happen is it's going to change it for everybody that's attached to that location. In this case, it's just one individual. And then it's going to move me over here in this list to the correct location. So if you notice here, scroll up just a little bit. If you notice here, I am now in that county in Virginia, and remember before I just had this one person in that location. Now I can see I actually have 13 people who have events in their lives that are attached to that location. But because the one person had it spelled wrong, he wasn't included in that full list of everybody that was from that particular or had events in their lives occur in that particular location. So it moves him basically into a list with everybody else associated with that place. Okay, so that has to do with places that are spelled incorrectly. I've come across several of those, and sometimes, like I said, it's because I've typed it too quickly, maybe the spelling has changed, or maybe I inherited that way. Another time where you're going to see unresolved place names in your place list has to do with it being not a complete entry. Now, the reason this happens for me is because I get in a hurry and I record a place, but I don't know what county that place is in. And so I just leave a space holder. I used to anyway, leave a space holder for the county and figure I'd go figure it out later. But the reality is that I didn't always go figure it out later. In fact, sometimes I never got back to it at all. So here's one, for example. So I have Gentryville, Missouri. You'll notice I've left a space there for the county because I didn't know what county it was in. My Family Tree Maker program has been able to find it on a map. So there's Gentryville in Missouri. But when I click on this button to resolve this place name, you'll notice it's not on this list. Now it gives me what they think might be close to it. I don't want to just check one of those without doing a little bit more research though. So what I do is actually really simple. I just go into Google and I type in Gentryville, Missouri, and I'm going to select that, and what I'm going to discover here very quickly is that Gentryville is an unincorporated community. So it is a place, but it's not an incorporated place, and so that's why it's not showing up in my list of official places, right? But it's in Douglas County, and then it gives me some very specific directions about where I can find it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to put Gentryville up here in my description. Now you notice the way that I did that was I just clicked this little up arrow and it removed Gentryville from the place name and put it into the description field. Again, that's because it's an unincorporated place, so it's not an official place. But I do know where it is on the map, right? It's right there, I can see it. Okay, I also now know that it's in Douglas County, Missouri. And so I can do a search on Douglas County, and now there's Douglas County, Missouri. I can click replace, and now it has the full thing, right? Gentryville, Douglas County, Missouri. But when I look at the view this way, that Gentryville is in the description field, and it's able to recognize the place name as just the county. Now, I could have done an additional step, which is when the map was zoomed in on Gentryville, let's zoom back in here, I could actually add the GPS location. So you find it on the map, and you can actually change or adjust this GPS location by just clicking this pin and then clicking on the map where it is. That gets really specific, but it's really kind of exciting to see where some of those places are. So now here's what happened to my list over here, right? So I'm going to titch that up a little bit. Okay, so here's Douglas County. It has now added Gentryville as a location on my under Douglas County. But one of the things I can do is I can click on Douglas County and I can see that I've got 38 people who are associated with Douglas County, which means I don't have any further detail about the event in their life and where it occurred. Or I have this option here to show everybody who lives or has an event in their life that occurred in Douglas County, even if I know the name of the specific location, right? So I've got 7 events in Ava and 1 in Buchanan and the 1 in Gentryville that we just looked at and a few in Squires, right? So I've got all these these cities in Douglas County with events attached to them. And if I want to see all of those in one list, I can just click linked to all here at Douglas County, and now I've got 46. Hopefully that makes sense. Play around with it. This is one of those things you have to kind of play around with to understand a little bit better. So 38 people who just have events in their life that are linked to Douglas County, 46 people who have events in their life that are linked to not just Douglas County, but a specific place in Douglas County. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, a couple of other causes for unresolved place names. So we've talked about incorrect spellings, incomplete entries. This one kind of goes along with it, but there are some other cases. So sometimes you have places entered in your database that are not an actual place. Now, in the example of Gentryville, it is an actual place. It's just an unincorporated place. That's not what I mean. What I mean is I have some records where I have proven that somebody was killed in the Civil War or died as results of injuries in the Civil War. But I have not yet been able to find out where they were when they died specifically. All I have is some military papers that list, the cause of death and whatnot. So I have actually listed in the place that they died in the Civil War, right? And I've done that just as a placeholder for myself. So things like that will show up on your unresolved place list. I have people who were born while their family was crossing the ocean. And so the birthplace is on the Atlantic Ocean or on board such and such a ship. If I wanted to resolve those places, I could just, for example, the Civil War, I could resolve that to the United States and just put Civil War in the description field. That would be the best way to handle that, again, so that I've got a location attached to this person. So I'm going to come up here and I've got this one person here who died in the Civil War. So if I'm going to resolve that, okay, again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this location and I'm going to bump it up to the description field. And then here in the place name, I'm just going to put USA and replace that. Again, what that does is that moves that person or that event into a list with everybody else who has the US as a location, and it maintains the details that I want in that description field. So hopefully that makes sense. Really useful. Okay, couple of more things here, or causes of unresolved place names. One is too much information. Now, you wouldn't think there would be such a thing in family history, but sometimes we get really granular in our place names, and you'll see I've got some of those as well. So, for example, here is one. I have, it's still trying to generate a list of all people in the United States, and I've got a lot of them, so it's taking a minute, it looks like. So one of the too much information things that we see is when you've entered the name of a cemetery where somebody is buried. That's the most common occurrence. Or where you have entered the name of a hospital where someone was born. So you've got the name of the cemetery, the name of the city, the name of the county, the name of the state, the name of the country. And again, that granular level of detail, because it's not an incorporated place, it might be able to locate it on a map, but it's not going to be able to find it in the resolved place names and group it the way that it needs to be grouped with the other people. So this is what I get for having too big of a database. So we'll look at a couple of those in just a minute. Let's move on to our final reason why you have unresolved place names on occasion in your database. The last reason is because it's not a current place. Now this gets us into the historical versus current place debate. One of my most common ones that shows up is Berkeley County, Virginia. So Berkeley County is actually in West Virginia, but for a really long time it was in Virginia. And so do I record it as Berkeley, Virginia, or do I record it as Berkeley, West Virginia? Well, now I have the ability to record it as both. So the official place name that can be on my resolved list is Berkeley County, West Virginia, and then in the description I can put Berkeley County, Virginia, and it'll be able to resolve that those two things are the same place. The other reason that it might not be a current place has to do with that incomplete entry issue that we talked about earlier, where it's not an actual geopolitical location. So those unincorporated towns, those post offices that were just the name of a post office, and that was the nearest post office to where your ancestor lived at the time of a certain event in their life. So I have one in my tree, and let's see if we can get back to this. Okay, so here's Union. So let's talk about these too much detail. So I've got Uniontown Cemetery in Uniontown, Northumberland County, Pennsylvania, and you'll notice it even zoomed right in on the map to where it thinks it is. So I can click on this resolve place name. I can take Uniontown Cemetery and bump it up to the description fields, and now I can search for just Uniontown, and I'm looking through this list. There's it doesn't show up, okay? And that happens, right? So either it's not on the list or it's not on the list in the way that you expect it to be. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to go over to Google and I'm going to type in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, and what I'm going to discover here is that Uniontown is a city in Fayette County, so it's not in the county that I thought it was. If I read a little bit, sometimes what you'll discover is that it may have been part of a different county previously, and this is going to require a little bit more research on my part. I don't want to take your time to do that, but this is the process that I go through, right? So I'll read through this article, maybe do a little bit more research, a couple more Google searches, see if I can figure out what's happened here. So my guess is one of a couple of things. Either Uniontown really is and always has been in Fayette County, and I just had the incorrect county listed. Or Uniontown used to be in Northumberland County, in which case I need to record that here in the in the description field or the detail field with the historical name, and then select Uniontown, Fayette County as the current place name. So one of those two. Or maybe it's not really Uniontown, right? Maybe Uniontown was the name of the cemetery, but the city is named something else. And so that might require a little bit more research on my part to figure out if I made a mistake or if I'm just not understanding what that location is. So that's the process I go through. And sometimes it's a little bit, sometimes it's easy, and sometimes it requires a little bit more research. But getting those places accurate is really important. Don't just pick something off the list because it looks close or because it looks good. If you do that, you're going to find that you'll run into brick walls in your family history research because you've recorded inaccurate information. And you might be looking 4 or 5 counties away for information that if you had recorded the place correctly, you could have found fairly readily. So making sure that you have the correct and accurate places is really important. I'm going to go ahead and click cancel on this one. I'm not going to replace anything. You'll notice it didn't change anything, and that's because I need to do some more research on that. So that's when you have too much information. If you've got, like I said, a cemetery name, and I have quite a few of those in my database that it looks like I need to go clean up. So again, just bump that cemetery name up to that description field, and then now I have the town and the county and the state, and in my case I like to put the country name on there, or the country abbreviation in this case. Click replace, and then it bumps it into the appropriate place in the hierarchy so that you can pull lists. Now, let's talk lastly today just about these lists. So there are a couple of ways to do this. One is if you just want to generate a list of everybody associated with a place just for reference or just to look at, you can do that fairly easily. You just click on the place. So in this case, it's Carroll County. I have this little arrow here I can expand to see what locations within Carroll County I also have people associated with. Or as I mentioned, I can click on the county name and then click linked to all. So I have 77 people who have Carroll County listed as a location for an event in their life. If I click link to all, you'll see I have 141 people who have Carroll County or some subsidiary of that attached to them. And so then I can just, look at this list. A couple of things that I might do with this list. I'll look at surnames. So for example, lots of Amoses, some Bakers, look for common names that show up repeatedly in a location. And that just gives me a really quick idea of what some of those names are. It also allows me to do, like I said, place research. So I could click on one of these, click go to, it takes me to that person in my tree. And now I can do some specific research around him and his family. Now that works if you want to go back and forth to the place list, or if you're just trying to get an overview, if you're diving into, say, if I was going to start looking at the 1860 census for Carroll County, Ohio, and I wanted to pull everybody who might be in Carroll County in 1860, it's a quick way to do that, just a really quick way to do that. I could also use this filter feature, and I use that a lot. On my index, I just click filter, and I'm going to filter in anybody where any place contains Carroll County, Ohio. And I'm going to click OK. And what that's going to do is it's going to generate a list of people in my database who are affiliated or associated with that place in some way. It takes a little bit of time here. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now you'll notice that the only people I have in this list are those people associated with or affiliated with Carroll County. So I can work my way down this way rather than having to go back and forth to this Places tab. So it just gives me a succinct view right here on the side so that I can do some research with the people on this one single screen. And this screen is where I spend most of my time in Family Tree Maker. The other thing you have the option of doing is you can actually create a custom report. So I can come in here to publish, and it might take a minute to run because it always checks your last report. I can come in here to publish. I have these person reports, and I have the option to create a custom report. And so I can say, I can do that same filter feature here where I say, give me a list of all people who are affiliated with this place, and then I can print that out and have it next to me if I'm the type of person that needs something tangible or a checklist. I love checklists. A checklist of things to work off of. I can have something printed in my hand that way of people affiliated with a specific place. There are also some place reports that you can use and some filters you can use there. So for example, I could print off a list not just of everybody affiliated with Carroll County, but break it out by the specific locations in Carroll County. Again, when I'm doing place research, that becomes really important. One last story I just want to share with you about ways in which this has become important to me. This last year, I had the opportunity to go to Cincinnati, Ohio for a conference. And when I was in Ohio, or actually when I was on the airplane headed to Ohio, I wanted to know if I'd ever had anybody in my family tree who had been in Cincinnati. And I really wasn't expecting it. And I never know if I'm spelling Cincinnati correctly. I really wasn't expecting it, but I thought I'll just check just in case. And so I ran this report or this filter where I just said, show me anybody in my tree who is affiliated with this place. And I think I spelled it wrong, which I always do. Let's try that. Okay. And that didn't work either. Cincinnati. Okay. So show me anybody in my tree who's affiliated with this particular location. And so I ran that list and discovered that here, this is my great-grandfather's brother. And it turns out that when I went to this, that he was, let's pull him up, actually born in Cincinnati in 1884, which means that my great-great-grandparents, or at least my great-great-grandmother, had to have been living there at the time. And so I started digging into, as I was on the plane, and then that first night in my hotel there, started digging into what's going on here and why were they here. And I know that neither of them were born here, they weren't married there, that neither of them had died there. And so what were they doing in Cincinnati at the time? Well, come to find out that my great-great-grandfather was the president of a printing company there, and so they lived there for quite a while. And so I looked at the city directories and was able to discover their home address and his business address, and come to find out it was actually just 3 or 4 blocks from my hotel, both the business and their home. And so I was able to go and take pictures of the area and walk. I walked the route that I thought he would have walked from home to work each day, and it was a really neat experience for me. I didn't actually do any original research. Like, all of that information I had, most of it I had in a database or from census records I'd already collected. I had to do a little bit of research into city directories, but mostly it was just this experience to walk in their footsteps and to be in a place that they had been. And again, it was totally unexpected, but it came about because I was able to just pull a quick list of everybody in my database who was affiliated with a specific location. That location-based research becomes really, really useful, and it also speeds up your research because you're doing groupings of research rather than following trails of people. And you start to understand the context of their lives a little bit better when you understand who their neighbors and their friends and the people that they associated with are. And place is really important. It's almost like a whole other entity when we're talking about family history research. Hopefully this was helpful for you. It's kind of a lot to wrap your head around. Like I mentioned, there are a lot of opinions about how to record things, but now this ability to record both a historical place and an existing place allows you to group people together appropriately, and Family Tree Maker gives you all kinds of tools to be able to do that. And I think it's really terrific. If you have questions, I will be available if you're watching this live on chat in just a few minutes to answer any of those questions. Or if you're watching an archived version of this on YouTube, please feel free to leave a comment. I do monitor those and will respond as appropriate. If you have ideas for future live stream broadcasts or questions that you'd like to see addressed, you can email me at ask@ancestry.com. I do read all of those emails. We don't respond to those individually. We use those mostly to put together these kinds of presentations, newsletter articles, and other learning tools, because chances are if you've got a question, somebody else has the same question. Until next time, this is Crista Cowan. Have fun climbing your family tree.